change. The Astrotherapy Podcast interviews.
You look like a firework. That's funny. The piece that we just, that the guest artist from Salt Lake created, started off with us doing these fireworks. More mess, more fireworks.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. How was it?
It was really great. It was a great show. Yeah.
Oh, how's your moment over there?
It is full of different emotions and also kind of like glad that things have been put away. And I'm looking forward to the next challenge, the next adventure. So, yeah.
You're constantly in those cycles.
Yes, we all are.
Indeed, Fran.
I feel like I do need a little bit of a break, and I'm just holding on, which is interesting. It's ironic because this whole my work that I made was what are you holding? I had an interactive board that had asked what are you holding, and then people could take a card and write on it and stick it to this board, not really knowing what the work was yet, or they could write after, so what are we holding?
That's a really good question. I feel like I'm holding a lot right now. I'm excited to get into this with you. Let's dive in and then go back to that because I'm really inspired by that question and how you're, provoking or invoking that inquiry in us as the audience, right? And then feeling that in your own body. It feels very apropos for you as an artist and what I want to talk to you about today. So, welcome to the Astrotherapy Podcast. And this is the interview series of which I'm conversing with people that I love and admire, those who are masterful in their lives and in their work. And I'm very honored to share them with you, my community. And today we are looking at change through the lens of dance, artistry, well-being, movement, motherhood, and life lived by Francesca Romo. So thank you so much, Francesca, for being here.
Thank you, Ciela. Thank you for inviting me into your community and asking some really interesting questions. I hope that I can fulfill this series, this podcast for your series.
Oh, thank you. It's really a joy to see you and to be here with you and share this space. And Francesca, for those of you who don't yet know her, she is an enigmatic soul. Okay. I first heard of you, Francesca, as the new girlfriend of one of my childhood friends, right? And immediately I could feel into your exotic, worldly presence in our small town of Jackson, Wyoming. Francesca has Italian roots. You were born in London. She's an international performer, co-founder of Gallim Dance, creative visionary, and a wellness advocate. I've been so fortunate to receive your healing work, Francesca, and I really hope that more and more people can experience that through your hands, your heart through your hands, your soul through your heart. And so it goes. And you serve through Gyrotonics. I've learned so much from your wisdom and your studies in that area, and as a craniosacral therapist. I think now you're an associate artistic director of choreography and a dancer at Dancers Workshop, where when I was 6 and 7 years old, I was dancing in my tutu there as well. So I love how these circles and cycles continue to unfold and reveal. So thank you again for being here, Fran. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate your words, and it's an honor to receive that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You are someone who definitely has reflected change back to me in our time of knowing each other, we've both been through lots of changes, lots of cycles, and have enjoyed conversations around death, rebirth, transformation, and how that shows up in our creative expressions, in our bodies. When you think of change, Fran, what comes up for you?
I can speak to something that's just kind of happened, which is these shows that I just did with Contemporary Dance Wyoming, and what happens within the cycle of a year in terms of making work, and then delivering work. And it's like the longer cycle of, while you're growing and expanding and changing within the year yourself, you're also having to make a work that is a concise packaged piece, and how during that time you are being affected and you're affecting the work, and what that says to me about like how it changed. I typically love to dive into a process with my heart, body, and soul. And to the frustration of the dancers, I change a lot of things. And that's only because I have to move forward with what is actually happening in real time in my own little window of my own world, and the changes that come with that. And so it's like a process within a process within a process sometimes. And also at the same time staying loyal and true to the original concept, which hasn't really changed. The only thing that's really changed is the way you view it, right, within that time frame. And throughout this year, I felt a lot of things in my body. I've had to kind of depart from being involved in the work physically and taking myself out and really looking at it from far away, which has been a blessing. And also at times I've wanted to go back in, because typically the way I work is also that I'm in the work that I produce. And I really wanted to change that habit for myself this year, and challenge myself to just look at something in front of me the whole time. And I think what it did was it really gave me so many lessons. There's so many tiny little lessons. And also there was a sense of, not a sense of necessarily like a small death, but like it was really just an invitation to grow in a different way, and to be a director, to be a leader, to be the person who is kind of who maybe doesn't know all the answers, but is not scared to stand in front of other people and say that, and invite them into my own narrative, and express to them when I need help. So a lot of body feelings, a lot of love in this process this year. I was actually very lucky for it to feel the way it felt, having been my first time really just directing and editing and directing and editing and leading, and sometimes sitting back and letting others kind of take over. It was a constant dialogue, and I feel very fortunate.
Wow, Fran, it's really exciting to witness you on this cusp, right? Like you've been a dancer since you were young, and then, in that kind of in between dancing, creating choreography, participating in it, and now stepping back and, the challenge of that spaciousness, both because I'm sure your body in some ways really wanted to be also experiencing that. Yeah, very much. But then the gift and the necessity of having that objectivity and what you can create from having objectivity rather than being so subjective inside of it.
Yeah, I had to learn how to get so much better at being objective. There were times where things felt way too personal, and I had to make the narrative or that particular section within the framework of the whole piece universal. And I would go home, I would be up at 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And then also on top of that, trying to be a mom and trying to be a really good partner to my husband and be a really good mom to my toddler. I felt like sometimes I was actually being stretched too much. And I would say, are you trusting the process right now, or is your ego like just needing to get it right? Like, what is it, this need to get it right? And the times that I would let things flow and things, to become a little bit uncertain is when I actually found the answer in the moment of like even being in rehearsal or walking down the street. I didn't have to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, like stressing over certain things that would actually just reveal themselves. Things just reveal themselves if you let them. And that's one of the things I've learned. And with that revelation comes also a trusting, and I think a trusting in your intuition and your instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I talk to the dancers about a lot. This piece wasn't a dance piece necessarily. It had a lot of physicality in it, but it was just trusting your instinct moment by moment. So that was a big change for me this year, as being from the like in the guts of it and in the trenches of it. I felt like I was in the trenches in a different way, and sometimes also kind of alone and lonely.
Fran, what you're sharing is really reminding me of the inner process of inner work. It's a psychological journey, right? It's the hero or the heroine's journey. It's so enticing, alluring, and dangerous, in certain ways. We don't really know what's around the corner. We have to cultivate and embody a depth of courage to take the next step, and also be humble enough to learn the lessons, to be able to receive the lessons, and to be able to then act from a new place. And when you're speaking about that your relationship with objectivity and being able to gain some of that, and you brought up ego, and I just find that really curious, because when we are identified with our ego or identified into a situation, we don't have objectivity, we don't have perspective, right? And perspective is everything. It can give us so much. And what you're sharing is just, to me, an embodiment of that hero and heroine's journey, and how we can experience something through the body. I'm sure, the dancers were experiencing this psychological journey working with you, Fran, as their director, right? And you're saying, okay, yeah, you have to be prepared for change. You have to be prepared for, it might be different in this moment. We may have started the journey like this, but now in real time, this is what is being asked of us as the dancers, as those who are, emitting a message, right, through the show. How did they respond to that? What is it like being a dancer, as with you as the choreographer and the director?
I would think it's probably both both joyful and fun, as equally frustrating and hard.
Mm.
There is one of the dancers did express when we were kind of making these little reels for our social media. She actually talks about, how sometimes she feels so tired or ridden with grief that she's going through her own personal journey, and she may come into the studio with maybe just 5% of her being. And how what I was moved by is that she said, Fran will take that 5% and turn it on its head and make something beautiful from it. And I think that's the kind of relationship I want to be in with humans, and I want to be in my work with these humans in there, is that I want to constantly have a dialogue that is feeling like we are respectful of each other's time, respectful of each other's feelings, and also working to a place that we want to get to together. And so that's why this process particularly wasn't like, I have an idea of a dance and I want to make it. It took all of our beings. It took all of our 5% to 100% to figure out the dialogue with each other and be in co-creation, not just, again, human to human, but be in co-creation with the work. And that was something really, it was really nice to explore, fun to explore. And you know, I'm not saying that this is going to be my every process that I do, but it's nice to have felt that and know and recognize that, so that if I get lost again somewhere down the line, I can kind of recall, like, what were some of the things that stood out for you, Fran, that were important?
When you speak about the work, is that, you know, is it kind of seen or felt as its own entity? Like, this is the work, and then you're in dialogue with that, you're working with, you're listening to it. What is that process like?
Well, I will say that this is the first time I kind of am in that idea. And it was a friend, my collaborator, Brad Smith, who kind of talked about the piece as an entity, as like, you have to start listening to the work itself, because you've completed it. Now, what does it need? And I was kind of like, yeah, of course. You treat it as if it's another. If it's another, it has soul. It has its own legs and arms, and it's growing. And you have to feed it in a way that is good and you know, nourishing. And so how did that feel for me? It felt like a new chapter. It felt like, again, oh, this feels good for my heart to work in this way. And just like I have to ask my heart, like, heart, how are you feeling today? You know, are you feeling clear, open, strong? I have to ask that of the work. And I don't necessarily tell the dancers that. I'm not going in there saying all these things. There are some things that I hold back that are just that I have to know. And I think also learning about that, like, you don't always have to say everything all the time, because it becomes confusing. And also, they have different brains. They have a different body. They have a different way of perceiving the world. I have to ask myself what's important to me, and then take everybody into consideration in a way that has, like, okay, this is serving it or this is not serving it. And then make choices within that. Yeah.
What you're sharing is really profound, Fran, and I know it's just your way of being, but, you know, taking a moment to really check in with how your heart is feeling before entering into a space of which you're interacting and working with others, or a space in which you're creating or co-creating, is so poetic, is so beautiful, is really kind of living awareness. And weaving that into your everyday. And I know that this is just who you are again. But I wanted to place emphasis on that for those who are listening, to also, you know, encourage or inspire that that's something that's possible, you know, that we can talk to our body and check in, that the body doesn't have to be this foreign thing that's just, you know, carrying us around, or, you know, hopefully we're aware that that's happening, but, you know, can you speak a bit more about the relationship to the body and how we can check in and why that's important?
The body, the nervous system carries so much information from past, from, you know, and how we react, or we are triggered perhaps by certain things. The information is all in there, and we're taught really not to listen to that part. We're taught to that the intellect is very important, or it has more dominance, and the intellect will always have an agenda, will always try to strategize everything, whereas the heart, which is feeding everything else, is actually really where we should be, maybe sometimes placing a little bit more focus on. And you know, I see my son do this all the time. He's in his heart body all the time. He is, of course, picking up concepts and working his brain. I'm not saying that you should be one or the other. It should be in synthesis. In fact, one of the things that what I wanted this work to kind of feel like for people who were witnessing and in it were, the longest journey you'll ever take in your life are the 18 inches from your head to your heart. And kind of bridging that gap is so important at this time for me personally. And I can't do that without feeling all the feelings in my whole entire system. Just like systems out in the world, we have a system that is inside ourselves, are part of a system. It's all conspiring to make us better, not to make us depleted or worse. And I'm wondering if we can start flipping the switch of, saying I'm safe in my body. If you don't feel safe maybe in a space or a community, you can always feel safe in your body. But it takes a lot of kindness, a lot of learning, and a lot of trust in oneself, no matter what wrong has been done to us. And I think when we are in a place that is maybe feeling like we have been wronged or tragedy or grief has happened, is we kind of like evaporate instead of coming back in. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, like, I'm here, I feel everything, and I can let those things move through me, and I can be devastated, but I don't have to live in that devastation. I can let it really move in and out, just like the tide, just like the ocean, just like the shore, come back and forth, rewashing. That's mm-hmm. the kind of like the fluidity, knowing that there's also there's fluid patterns in our body too, the welling and then the emptying. So yeah, making sure that this body that we are in is our body and that we love it every single day.
Yes, I'm also someone who's learned a lot from my body. I know that when my body's speaking to me, it's speaking a truth. And it might be something that I've avoided or haven't noticed, but when it's speaking to me, it's speaking up for a reason. And I must say, I'm doing this podcast series on change because change is a hot topic right now, but change is always happening, right? And our body is a mirror of that. We come into this world like a small little baby, that, cute and soft and chubby sometimes and malleable. And we leave this earth, if we have the privilege to live a very long life, in a completely different state of physicality, and hopefully a very different state emotionally and psychologically. We've picked up a thing or two, maybe we've learned something along the way, but we are just completely different, changing all the time. But in this moment, Fran, a lot of people are looking at what's happening in the world and feeling changes in regards to, the way life has been. Or maybe some of us have had a semblance of comfort or a way of life that we now see that is being disrupted in some way, and I think, again, not everyone on the planet's having that experience because many people have been living in disruption for a long time. But I'm curious to explore what change is for each one of us, and our perspectives on it. And, as you're sharing this, it's just, the body is such an incredible teacher. It's such an incredible teacher of change, and being able to listen to it feels deeply important. And there is something about this moment, that feels palpable. I think we're on the cusp of some bigger changes globally. And as an empathic person, as a sensitive person, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it in my body, And so what you're saying is really resonating as far as just I don't know, maybe you're not saying it outwardly, but what I'm feeling internally as you're speaking is the need to really find a rootedness in the physical body when the external reality is in a constant state of flux.
You ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your journey, Fran, because as you've changed throughout your life, as far as, you were brought to dance. Dance is a language of change. I see it as like a way of expressing stories and feelings and and change that maybe we can't articulate with words. And then you studied gyrotonics, and I'd love to hear you speak a little bit about that, and then how that led you into craniosacral therapy and kind of where you are with that too.
Yeah. Thank you. I have had a lot of change because I've maybe, again, it's like maybe our paths are designed and we don't know. And I just followed really, I've always followed my intuition. And I trained really hard when I was younger. I trained in a very rigorous in ballet. So it was a rigorous training. It was a vocational school that I went to. And I'm really happy for that because it did give me a base, even though at times it was very difficult, very challenging to be told, no, you won't ever succeed, or you're not good enough, or your feet aren't good enough, or your body isn't good enough. It was all, and having all that feedback was a very external, external experience. So I'm already at a young age, you're being told certain things and you're not really being told, well, what matters to you inside? And luckily my mother was the one that kind of steered the ship in a different direction for me and made me think about, but what does Fran believe in? What does Fran feel? Thankfully. And that took me to a completely different training with contemporary dance in London. And so I was exposed to things other than ballet. I was exposed to physical theater. I was exposed to people, from circus to commercial work to very avant-garde moves, to all of it kind of sometimes in one work. And I was like, there is so much possibility here. And I will take what I have, what I've had as a training, and I will bring it, and I will, again, try and alchemize, that's even a word, the contemporary. I never said, oh, I did that, and now I'm this. I've always wanted to keep, putting things in my toolbox and really finding what's the alchemy here, what are we cooking with? And that led me then to have a job in London and dance for a dance company and come to the States on a tour. And the reason why I'm here is because of that dance company. And I'm really grateful for that. And then deciding, again, having my intuitive, being younger, being 20 years old and saying, I feel like being in the States is the right move here because there's, again, more potential for growth. There isn't this kind of, in London, it was becoming very much like you had to apply for grants. If you wanted to have your own dance company, it was becoming harder. And also the money wasn't coming in for the arts. And I was seeing that in the States, people were moving and grooving. There was like a scene. There was like something that you wanted to be a part of it, even if it was just as an observer. You just wanted to get in. The conditions were ripe. And the conditions were ripe for me to move there and meet Andrea Miller, who is the director of Gallim Dance, and start a company with her. We ate, we slept, we did dance all the time. To the point where our bodies were like, oh, we are so sore because we were trying all sorts of things, and we were building a friendship at the same time. So in tangent, there was this like desire to communicate in this way of through the dance language, but also be really kind of understand who we were as people with each other. was a really beautiful time. We had some momentum going. We gathered some more people in this company, and change was coming. Like it was palpable. You could feel something happening, and getting a little bit more attention. Making this work with her really propelled me into a different stratosphere that I am so grateful for. My being is very grateful for that. And yes, having all of this like I felt like I was picking up the earth and pulling it in and just like smelling something so warm and delicious all the time. It was such a beautiful place to be at. And then, you grow and things start to shift as you start to grow in your 30s, and the idea of where you want to be and what you want to do start to shift. And so do people. And that's what happened to us. And I decided to move to Jackson. And I didn't actually want to dance anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't
You
want
felt
to.
you were done.
I had so much, like the work that she creates is extremely physical. She worked with a company in Israel called Batsheva, and coming from that language, then trying to build her own language with that, it was highly, highly, highly physical work. It was bringing the animal into your, into the field all the time, and sometimes the animal just wanted to rest, and my animal at the end of the day was like, I actually got to work with animals because I wanted to work on a ranch and feel a different kind of challenge for my body and my brain and my heart, in a more Western way.
Wow, I actually didn't know that part about you, Fran.
Yeah, I never got to live it yet. Maybe my son will live it. I'll live vicariously through him. But I wanted to feel the richness of the earth, and the getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning because you had to go feed this and you had to go, build fences and wrangle and do all of it. Was like a different physical labor that I was looking for. I didn't want to just not move. It was just a different kind of movement for the body. Yeah.
What did you learn building fences versus going into the studio and enacting your animal? Like, what was that juxtaposition like for you physically?
I don't think actually there's much difference.
Okay.
I think that there's always there's a commitment to both. There's a meditation to both. There's a taking a step back and looking at, am I completing this task? Have I gone so far away, and just feeling the heartbeat of it. It's consistent. So I don't think there's that much difference really in that.
What was your animal, or what animals did you love exploring in your physical body?
Like actual animals?
Yeah, I mean, but
Yeah.
in the studio, in the dance.
Animal or even monster, I would say. I think it's not so much like maybe an animal that we recognize as like a dog or a horse, although the galloping, like even the small, I sometimes say in class, like feel the purring or the roar, like the really quiet roar of your engine. And that to me is, there's an animal in that, right? Because you know what a purr sounds like, and you've heard it before, whether you have a cat or you've heard it, a lion. And so it might be like parts of the animal. Lately I've had the spider. She's been around a lot. But anyway, it's parts of this maybe made up animal that you are, that is yours, that is only yours. It's like your thumbprint, or your fingerprint. No one else on this planet has the same, and how is that animal come out this time? She's been there. He's been there. She's been there. They've been there. Yeah. Consistent purring, I would say. The purring is something that I love. Like, it's just soft, and it can go a little higher, it can go a little lower depending on the mood.
Mm. And how did you get from the ranch to then studying gyrotonics, and
Okay.
what was that like?
So gyrotonic came while I was working in New York with Gallim. I decided that I needed to, for myself, have a backup plan for my future. So I looked into certain trainings. At the time, the gyrotonic world was called White Cloud System, and it had just started. In 2008 is when I started my training, and I found a small studio in the Lower East Side, and trained with a master trainer, and was like, this is so close to dance. Like everything was an invitation to move your body in a way that flowed. And so I really then said, okay, I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to do it. And, a couple of years later, I was done with my training, and I have a certificate now that I have to keep renewing, but it's a wonderful method. It's a method that is really about your spine, and how with age, we kind of become more and more compressed because of gravity, because of our life situation. We're all impacted by certain things. And this method really teaches us to, number one, to recognize, like, yes, we have all these body parts, but we're one system. And number two, to understand what breath is, again, to relearn that breath is what really creates movement. And once you understand breathing, that you can move, and you can use your body to give you resistance. I love all the bands and the exercise things, and all of that is so important if you want to isolate and you want to retrain certain muscle groups and you want to be very specific. But the gyrotonic method can be very specific, and it can also be very large at the same time. So you can kind of zoom in and zoom out constantly. And it offers a wonderful way to look at movement in a different way. Look at how we and our patterns.
And was that lens of looking into how our body moves and the patterns, was that inspiring for you in a way that then led you towards the craniosacral, or what's the relationship there?
The fluids, I think, in our body was fascinating, and yes, the movement component in a more holistic, like looking at why do we have gestures? How do they emerge? Like, why do people cross their legs or move their feet or hold on to I was kind of starting to look at smaller things, and I was like, why do these things happen? And that led me to an acupuncturist actually saying to me, I think you'd really love this specific craniosacral institution. And it's called, Hugh Milne is the person who runs the institute, and his work is visionary craniosacral work. And the way that he looks at the work is from a more shamanic way. And which actually leads me into the work that I just made for the company. We had to keep our channels open, and a lot of the work that we do in this craniosacral work is keeping your channels open. Your vagus nerve is a channel, your hands are a channel, your inner ear is a channel, the air is a channel. They're all channels that, if kept open, we're receiving constant information. We just are out of practice with it, or we've just forgotten. So I loved the way that he was presenting, and that he's still teaching, that he is presenting the this kind of therapy, this kind of work, and that it's more than just knowing the anatomy. You have to ask all the time, like, who's here? Who's in front of me? Where are they on their journey? What do they need? And if you aren't asking those questions, you're not really learning about that person who's on your table, that you have to love unconditionally.
It sounds like a spiritual practice. And those questions are, it's like, who's here? I mean, that's a question I actually ask myself, like, who am I being right now? Who's here? Who's in front of me? How am I interacting? How am I navigating this wild world? Yeah, it's such a particular lens. I love the shamanic exploration through the fluids of the body. Is the nervous system, does it rest or travel through the fluids? What's the relationship between the nervous system and the fluids, like the rivers of the body?
So the cerebrospinal fluid is what's flushing everything. It's moving, from your head, from your brain, taking out all the things that it doesn't need, the toxins, and moving back down your spine. It's flushing. So it's in constant renewal throughout the day. And I can't remember how many times it does this and how much liquid is actually being moved, but it's many times. And so what we call, like, if someone comes in and they've had a concussion or they've had a brain injury or they're not feeling well, we typically say, like, the potency of the fluids is not at its best. And once you get the potency to move back again and to nourish the brain and to move through the spine, then things start moving. And one could explain it as like stagnation, like you're at a riverbed and it doesn't have any water in it, and there's a pool of water that's just like pooling and it's not really moving. And so with this work, we try and get the fluids and the motility of the bones of the head to once again feel the potency and move in a way that then is like a sigh.
So it's that constant state of change that's actually our homeostasis.
Yes, 100%. There's never any like resting. And if it does rest, typically we will feel ill. We will get ill. And that's what creates dis-ease. And that's why movement is so important, because it creates this constant change and movement of fluids, lymphatic, cerebrospinal, blood, and on and on and on.
Fran, you've been talking and you refer back to the work that you just completed. Can you share what you mean by that? What was it about? What called you to this particular piece, and why now?
Why now? I don't know how to answer why now. I just felt like it needed to come out, and I was like, I have an idea, and if I don't bring it forward, I'm never going to do it. So I was just called to be a little bolder than I normally am and less reserved, and just like, it's almost like that saying, it's like you can beg for forgiveness later. I was like, I'm just going to put it out, and if people are like, why are you doing this? This is just, I'm sorry, it had to come out. So I felt this calling, and it was strong. I was inspired by Myra Kalman, who is an artist, an author, and a poet, and her book called Women Holding Things. And I was listening to a podcast, and the way that she was talking lit up my heart, because number one, she writes about heavy topics, about heavy things, but the way that her art is, and the color palette that she uses, and then the way she writes it, are so funny. And I was just blown away that can exist together, that juxtapositioning can exist. And there's very few people that I feel have that gift, and she's one of them. And so my admiration for her grew, and I bought the book and I was reading through it, and I then started to think about, like, what are all humans holding, and especially at this time. So it was more of a timing thing. I think that's why this piece belongs a little bit in this time and nowhere else. Like, I can't really recreate it. It just it's had its shelf life, and poof, it's gone. And as an artist, to be able to detach yourself from to be able to be really detached in that sense is really difficult. And that's another thing that I'm learning, and is a big change in my life. Because attachment, where we are attached, we're not really growing. So this piece exists in this time, as I said, and I have this, I love this little poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. I live my life in growing orbits, which move out over the things of the world. Perhaps I can never achieve the last, but that will be my attempt. And I think that sums this whole process up for me.
Wow. Wow, that's so lovely. To every one of the cells in my body, hearing that. It's really beautiful. And so as an audience member, having received this work, what have you heard? What was the feedback? And you were sharing earlier about this sign that you had up about, it was a question. Can you talk a little bit about that too?
So the question came obviously from having done this research on what are women holding, and then what are we holding as individuals? What is this planet holding? Going from, again, the micro to the macro to the micro, bigger and smaller, kind of zooming in and out, and making it a universal experience through a little bit of a narrative. And there was a lot of spoken word in this work, that and poetry also, that referenced this idea of holding. One of the first lines of a poem that ended up becoming the title of this piece was "Hang on to me, no, hold on to me." And whether that be an idea or another human being, it kind of propelled me into thinking, well, I want other people to join in with this. And if they're brave enough, they'll write something and they'll put it on there, and they'll take a look at it and reflect it back. And maybe it speaks to someone else who was, in the audience. The way the audience responded to this piece, because I had them, it was a little bit of an immersive piece. I had them, I invited them, from the dancers actually invited them to come up and to dance at the end.
Wow.
So we were all on the dance floor at the end. There was no this is the end and we bow now. It was very much an invitation to stay open, to stay present. Just like the craniosacral work, we meditate together. Like we try and see each other, me from the standpoint of the practitioner to the client, and then the client back reflecting to me. And I had the dancers do the same thing with the audience members. I had them sit at the end of the work, towards the end of the work, in the chairs, and just look at people. And, I don't know exactly what, in terms of its meaning, the bigger meaning, what I think I heard from the community members was, or from our community, was that it felt very safe, and they felt seen, and it felt like it was their story. So for me, that was a big yes, that was the idea.
Congratulations, Fran. That's really exciting. I'm so happy for you that you've had the first kind of directorial debut from the seat of not physically participating in the work, and have that experience now. I also love that the audience was invited to come dance, because it's like, hang on, no, hold on. And I'm like, okay, and then do we get to let go too? Is there that consistent pulsation in that, right? So I can feel that. I'm so happy for you. And Fran, is there, for those who are curious about your work, how can people find you, or what Is there anything you want to share with us, like what you're up to, what changes on the horizon for you now?
There's a lot of work to be done in this world, and the first thing that one can do is, like, as you said right at the beginning of this podcast, is to become introspective and be curious about what's going on with oneself in order to really respond and maybe to understand rather than react. And yeah, to listen to respond, or listen to understand rather than listen to react. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be a little bit better at, perceiving or keeping my channels open so that I can receive things and then move forward with them. And that's a big change for me. Because I have always tend to be on the spectrum of reacting to things, whether it be like a good reaction or a negative reaction. And I'm trying to tone that down a little bit and just trust what is coming in is exactly what needs to be coming in. And again, going back to how can we detach ourselves, whether it be detaching ourselves from our phones and our computers for a second and kind of, again, acknowledging and honoring ourselves on a constant basis, honoring your body and your heart, rather than being so outward facing. And so trusting the process. Trusting. Yeah.
We'll find you trusting your process as a living example for us to trust our process. Fran, anything you want to share about just these last few moments about becoming a mother? I mean, that's a huge change for all of us when we become parents. I'm just wondering if you can share any wisdom and what you've learned in that journey.
I don't know if I have like wisdoms, because I'm just here, guys. I'm just doing what I can do the best I can every day sometimes. And my best fluctuates. I would say that the one thing I'm trying to model for my son and for the world is making sure that you are kind, because right now we need more kindness than ever with all the chaos that is going on. And kindness comes in many different ways. And there's a level of patience in there, patience with oneself in order to be patient with this smaller creature who is really looking to us, to do right, and also to impress us all the time. And hopefully there's a level that as a mother, I'm trying to hope, I'm crossing my fingers that my son doesn't lose his authenticity to please the world. I hope that he can please himself enough and be of his own character and authenticity to himself all the time. And I'll just be a witness to that, because that's nothing to do with me. That's to do with him.
Oh, thank you, Fran. That's so beautiful. And yeah, maybe it has nothing to do with you in a certain regard, but you being an example to him, you living that in your own flesh, definitely may have something to do with inspiring him to do that for himself. So thank you for doing that.
I hope so. Yeah.
Any last words for us today, Fran? Anything you want to share?
I just want to say thank you to you for just your clarity and wisdom, and for teaching me about the world and about oneself. And just, I hope that you continue with this work and, find ways that people can become engaged or in awe of themselves through what you're doing and through how you're speaking and how you're modeling things. So thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
Yeah.
Biggest hug to you from here to Jackson.
To you too. Big kiss. Take care.
Thanks, love.